What do you do when the man who destroyed you sends you an invitation to his new life? When the woman who replaced you wants you to watch her victory? Sarah Field Vance was invisible, broken, and forgotten. Her ex-husband Mark was marrying into a powerful family, and he wanted Sarah Field to be there as his final humiliation. But they made one mistake. They forgot that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. They thought she'd come alone. They never expected her to walk in with the one man they were all desperate to impress. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about power. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, heavy, and smelling faintly of jasmine and Sarah Field Vance thought smugness. It had been delivered by courier to the tiny, struggling art gallery she managed in Soho, the Elysian Gallery. It was an act of aggression disguised as etiquette. She waited until she was back in her fourth-floor walk-up in Greenpoint, the one with the rattling pipes, and the view of a brick wall before she opened it. Her cat, a scruffy tabby named Hopper, wound around her ankles as she slit the seal with a kitchen knife. It was exactly what she knew it would be. Amelia Davenport and Mark Landon. Request the pleasure of your company. At their marriage celebration, Saturday the 14th of November, at the Plaza Hotel, the Grand Ballroom. A smaller, equally thick card was tucked inside. On it, a handwritten note in perfect looping cursive. Sarah Field, I do hope you can make it. It would mean so much to Mark to know you've truly moved on. We're both so happy. Amelia. Sarah Field sank onto her worn velvet armchair, the one she'd bought at a thrift store. The invitation felt like a 20-pound weight in her hands. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a summons, a command performance to witness the final triumph of the two people who had systematically dismantled her life. Mark, her husband of 10 years. The man she had supported, loved, and believed in when he was just an ambitious junior associate at a finance firm. She had worked 2 jobs, then pouring her own small inheritance into his dreams, paying for his tailored suits and hosting dinners for his bosses. She, the art history major, had learned to talk derivatives and market caps. And it had worked. He'd climbed. He'd become successful. And the moment he'd reached the floor he wanted, he'd looked at the woman who had helped him build the ladder and decided she was no longer suitable. Amelia Davenport was suitable. She was the daughter of Harrison Davenport, a real estate mogul with a reputation for crushing his rivals. Amelia was blonde-polished and had never worked a day in her life. She was the prize Mark had been working for. The divorce had been brutal. Mark, using his new connections, had painted Sarah Field as unstable, greedy. She'd been left with almost nothing, her name dragged through the mud of the New York social pages. She had been Sarah Field Landon, the bitter ex-wife. Now, a year later, she was just Sarah Field Vance, manager of the Elysian, a gallery owned by a kind, elderly man named Arthur who was on the verge of bankruptcy. She was quiet, tired, and, as the invitation implied, forgotten. Her phone buzzed. It was her best friend, Chloe. "Tell me you didn't get it," Chloe said, skipping hello. "It's impressive," Sarah Field murmured, tracing the gold embossing. "I think the paper is 120-pound stock." "Sarah Field, you are not going. You are going to burn that, perform a small cleansing ritual, and then come over here so I can pour a bottle of overpriced wine into your face." "She wrote me a note, Chloe. She wants me to be there. She wants to see me pathetic and alone. She wants to parade Mark in front of me." "And that's exactly why you're not going. You don't give them the satisfaction. You have a sudden case of the plague." "Yes, very contagious." Sarah Field laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "It's at the Plaza, the Grand Ballroom. We used to walk by there. Mark always said. He said that's where we'd renew our vows one day." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. "That man," Chloe finally seethed, "is a parasite. And Amelia is the host. Okay, new plan. You are going." "What, Chloe? No. You just said, I was wrong. You're not going to hide. You're not going to be the victim. You are going to go and you are going to look so unbelievably shatteringly beautiful that Mark Landon regrets the day he ever learned to breathe. You're going to walk in there, drink their free champagne, and show them you're not broken. And who am I walking in with? Seraphiel asked, the fight draining out of her. Hopper the cat. My $400 a month student loan bill. I can't even afford a new dress, let alone a ticket to... Oh God, it's a seated dinner. She'll probably put me at a table in the kitchen. We'll find you a dress. You'll rent one. And you'll go alone. It's powerful. I don't need a man. It's pathetic, Chloe. That's what they'll see. The poor, lonely ex-wife watching the love of her life marry a younger, richer woman. No, I'm not going. Seraphiel hung up, tossing the invitation onto her cluttered coffee table. It landed face up, the glittering gold script mocking her. She looked around her tiny apartment. The life she was left with. The life Mark and Amelia had deemed appropriate for her. She wasn't going. It was the only power she had left. She would deny them their audience. She picked up the RSVP card. Declines with regret. Her hand trembled as she reached for a pen. But she didn't check the box. She couldn't, because as much as she hated to admit it, some small, broken part of her still couldn't believe it was real. A part of her needed to see it. 3 weeks passed. The RSVP deadline came and went. Seraphiel had done nothing. The invitation sat on her desk at the gallery, a silent, creamy time bomb. Her boss, Arthur, was too kind to ask why she spent her lunch breaks staring at a wall. The Elysian Gallery was Seraphiel's only refuge. It specialized in undiscovered modern impressionists. She loved the smell of the oil paint and the turpentine, the quiet echo of the polished wooden floors. But love didn't pay the rent. Arthur had confided in her that they had 2 months, maybe 3, before they would have to sell to a developer who wanted to turn the building into luxury condos. On a rainy Tuesday, the gallery was empty. The bell over the door chimed, and Seraphiel looked up from her ledger, annoyed at the interruption. A man stood there shaking a fine cashmere umbrella. He wasn't dressed like a typical gallery patron. No flashy watch, no designer suit. He wore dark, perfectly fitted jeans, a simple gray Henley, and a worn dark peacoat. He was tall, with sharp features and hair the color of jet, speckled with a bit of silver at the temples. But it was his eyes that held her. They were a pale, piercing blue, and they scanned the room with an intensity that was almost unnerving. He looked less like an art lover and more like a predator. He moved through the gallery with a silent, confident grace. He didn't browse. He assessed. He stopped in front of their centerpiece, a chaotic, beautiful oil painting by a new artist from Chicago named Francis Vale. It was titled Convergence. It's derivative, the man said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that cut through the silence. Seraphiel stiffened. I'm sorry. He didn't turn. It's derivative. The brushwork is a clumsy attempt to mimic Richter, but the color palette is pure, unadulterated Rothko. The artist is talented, but they're hiding behind their influences. They're afraid. Seraphiel, who had staked the gallery's last dime on Francis Vale, felt a flare of protective anger. She walked over to stand beside him. You're wrong, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. He finally looked at her. The full force of his gaze was startling. Am I? It wasn't a question. You're right about the influences. Vale is clearly a student of the masters. But it's not mimicry, it's a conversation. Look here. She pointed to a slash of violent crimson hidden in the deep blues. Richter would never have used that. It's too emotional. And Rothko's colors were about devotion. This is about conflict. It's not derivative. It's synthesis. He's not afraid. He's just getting started. The man stared at her, his expression unreadable. For a solid minute he said nothing. Seraphiel felt her flush of confidence ebb, suddenly aware she had just lectured a wealthy patron. I apologize, she stammered. Art is subjective, of course. Don't apologize, he said. "It's the first honest thing I've heard in a gallery in a decade. You're passionate, and you're right." He turned back to the painting. "What's the artist's name again?" "Francis Vale." "And the price?" Seraphiel swallowed. $22,000. "I'll take it," he said as if he were ordering a coffee. He pulled out a simple black credit card. The name on it was just J. Thorne. Seraphiel was so stunned she almost dropped the card. "Of course, Mr. Thorne. I'll just wrap this for transport." "Don't. My team will retrieve it. Just process the payment." As she ran the card, her hands shook. The sale went through instantly. This single purchase would keep the gallery open for another 6 months. She handed him the receipt. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne. This means a great deal to the artist. And to the gallery. You saved the sale, Ms. Vance." Seraphiel Vance. His eyes flicked from her face to her desk. He saw the invitation. The thick, creamy envelope. His gaze lingered on it for just a second too long. "Vance." He repeated the name, tasting foreign. "You should be in a better gallery, Ms. Vance. This place is a mausoleum." Before she could form a reply, he was gone, the bell chiming his exit. Seraphiel didn't see him again for 2 weeks. The painting was picked up by men in dark suits who were so efficient they were terrifying. Life returned to its new, anxious normal. Then, on a Friday evening, just as she was closing up, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom slid to the curb. It was the kind of car that didn't just park, it docked. The back door opened and Jackson Thorne emerged. This time he was in a suit. It was dark charcoal, custom-tailored, and probably cost more than her apartment. "Ms. Vance," he said, holding the gallery door open for her. "Mr. Thorne, can I help you? The gallery's closed." "I'm not here for the art. I'm here for you. We're going to dinner." It was not a request. Seraphiel was so thrown she just grabbed her coat. I have a proposition for you," he said, guiding her toward the car. The interior smelled of rich leather and quiet, terrifying power. "And I believe it is mutually beneficial." They drove in silence to the grill, a place Seraphiel had only ever read about. The maitre d' practically genuflected as they were shown to a quiet, dark wood booth. Jackson Thorne ordered a 1945 Macallan without looking at the menu. Seraphiel just asked for water. "You're wondering why you're here," he said, steepling his fingers. The thought had crossed my mind. "I am a man who appreciates overlooked assets. That painting you sold me. The artist Francis Vale. I've since acquired his entire collection. My firm is now representing him. You were right. He's brilliant." "That's wonderful, Mr. Thorne." "Call me Jackson. And yes, it is. But I'm not here about Vale. I'm here about that." He nodded as if he could see the invitation still sitting on her desk. "The Plaza. Mark Landon and Amelia Davenport." Seraphiel's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you mean." "Please, Seraphiel, don't insult my intelligence. My firm, Thorne Industries, has been the target of a rather clumsy acquisition attempt by Harrison Davenport for the last 6 months. I've had a team doing due diligence on him, his family, his new son-in-law." He took a sip of his scotch. "I know exactly who Mark Landon is. And I know who you are, his ex-wife, the one he cheated on and then financially bled dry." Seraphiel felt nailed to the seat. She was exposed, humiliated all over again. "If you're here to gloat or—" "I am here," Jackson interrupted, his voice sharp, "to offer you a deal. I, too, have received an invitation to this wedding. Harrison Davenport is desperate to get me in a room to impress me. He thinks this wedding is his chance." "So, you're going—" "I was not. I despise such gaudy, transparent social maneuvering. But then I met you, and I saw the invitation on your desk." A slow, dangerous smile crossed his face. "You, Seraphiel, are my overlooked asset. You want to walk into that ballroom and see the look on your ex-husband's face. And I want to walk into that ballroom and gut Harrison Davenport's ambition without saying a word. He leaned in. So here's my proposition. You will RSVP, yes, with a +1. And on the night of the wedding, I will be that +1. Seraphiel's immediate reaction was a jolt of pure, undiluted fear. It was followed by a dizzying wave of nausea. Jackson Thorne wasn't just some wealthy art buyer. He was Jackson Thorne. The name echoed in the chambers of New York finance like a thunderclap. He was a corporate raider, a kingmaker, and according to the tabloids, a complete recluse. He bought and sold companies the way other people bought groceries. He was in every sense of the word one of the most powerful men in the world. And he wanted to take her to her ex-husband's wedding. "Why?" she finally managed to whisper. "Why would you do this? It's cruel. You'd be using me to get at Harrison Davenport." Jackson signaled the waiter. "I'll have the steak tartare. She'll have the Dover sole, and a bottle of the '96 Montrachet." He turned back to her, his blue eyes as cold and clear as the ice in his glass. "Of course I'd be using you," he said simply. "And you would be using me. That's the honesty of the transaction. You're not a fool, Seraphiel. Don't pretend to be one. You want to go. You want them to see you. But you're afraid to go alone. You're afraid you'll look like what they've tried to make you, a pathetic, forgotten woman. If you walk in with me, you will be neither." They'll think you've won," he cut in. "They will see you on the arm of a man who could buy and sell Harrison Davenport's entire portfolio before cocktail hour is over. They will see you wearing a dress I will provide and jewels that will make Amelia Davenport's new ring look like a party favor. You will not have to say a single word. Your presence will be a statement." "And what do you get?" she pressed, needing to understand the cost. "Just the satisfaction of ruining their night?" "Don't underestimate the value of satisfaction," he said, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Harrison Davenport believes this wedding, this union of his daughter to an ambitious, amoral man like Landon, solidifies his empire. He believes it will make him respectable. He wants my firm to partner with him on the new Hudson Yards project. He's distasteful, as is your ex-husband. I have no interest in the project, but I've been unable to get him to accept my no. He keeps sending gifts requesting meetings." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "My presence at his daughter's wedding on the arm of his new son-in-law's ex-wife will be the final definitive no. It will be a public humiliation. It will tell him and the rest of New York that the Davenports are not in my league. It is, as I said, a mutually beneficial arrangement." Seraphiel looked down at her hands. This was a devil's bargain. It was using another person's power for her own petty revenge. It was everything she'd always prided herself on not being. But then she thought of the note. "I do hope you can make it." She thought of the years she'd spent building Mark up only to be tossed aside like trash. She thought of the whispers, the pitying looks, the shame of having to move into a tiny apartment while Mark moved into a Park Avenue penthouse. The part of her that was good and kind was warring with the part of her that was human. "They deserve it," she said so quietly she barely heard herself. "Yes," Jackson agreed. "They do? So do we have a deal, Seraphiel Vance?" She looked up, meeting his intense gaze. She was no longer the frightened gallery manager. She was a woman making a choice. "We have a deal, Jackson Thorne." The next week was a blur. Seraphiel, at Jackson's instruction, RSVP'd. Seraphiel Vance and guest. She imagined Amelia's confusion. Guest. The day before the wedding, a team descended on her apartment. It was not as she'd expected, a single stylist with a rack of rented dresses. It was 3 people. One was a severe-looking woman named Antoine who handled couture. The other 2 were hair and makeup artists who spoke in rapid-fire French. "Mr. Thorne has been specific," Antoine said, her eyes scanning Seraphiel's apartment with distaste. "You are not to be a princess. You are to be a queen. There is a difference." They didn't ask her what she liked. They brought one dress. It was in a sealed black garment bag. When Antoine unzipped it, Seraphiel gasped. It was not a revenge dress. It wasn't black or red or revealing. It was a deep, breathtaking emerald green. It was made of a heavy silk that seemed to drink the light in the room. The cut was masterful long sleeves, a high elegant neckline, and a back that plunged to the precise tasteful base of her spine. It was a custom Oscar de la Renta, so new it hadn't even been photographed yet. "The color," Seraphil whispered, "is for new beginnings," Antoine said, "and for envy. Now the jewels." A man in a simple black suit who had been standing silently by the door stepped forward with a steel briefcase. He opened it. Seraphil felt faint. Resting on black velvet was a necklace. It wasn't a delicate chain. It was a river of diamonds punctuated by 3 massive cushion-cut Colombian emeralds. The center stone was the size of a robin's egg. Matching earrings lay beside it. "The Céline Parure," Antoine said, her voice hushed with reverence. "From Mr. Thorne's private collection. It belonged to his grandmother." Seraphil touched the center stone. It was cold. I can't wear this," she said, pulling her hand back. This is priceless. What if I lose it?" "You will not," Antoine said, "because Mr. Thorne's personal security will be with you all evening. 2 men. They will look like guests, but they will be watching the necklace." The reality of what she was doing hit Seraphil with the force of a physical blow. She was being draped in millions of dollars, given armed guards, and sent as a strategic weapon into a war she never wanted to be a part of. I need a minute," Seraphil said, backing into her small bathroom. She looked at her own reflection. The tired eyes, the faint lines of stress. This was madness. She called Chloe. "He's sending armed guards, Chloe. For the necklace. It was his grandmother's." "Good." Chloe's voice crackled. "It shows he's serious. Seraphil, this is it. This is the moment from every movie we've ever loved. You are Cinderella, except instead of a prince, you got a cynical, terrifyingly hot billionaire. It's better. Now you put on that dress, you let them put on the diamonds, and you go and burn that ballroom to the ground. Metaphorically. Do not damage the necklace." Seraphil took a deep breath. She looked at her pale, normal face one last time. "Okay," she said. "I'm doing it." She walked out of the bathroom. "All right, Antoine. Let's get to work." The next 2 hours were not about making Seraphil beautiful. They were about revealing the woman who had been buried for years under layers of grief and self-doubt. The hair and makeup artists, Jean-Pierre and Luc, worked with the silent, focused intensity of Renaissance painters. They didn't cake her face in makeup. They evened her skin until it looked like porcelain. They brought out her high cheekbones with a subtle contour. They gave her a smoky slate-gray eye that made her own green eyes look sharper, more intelligent. Her hair was swept up into a complex, elegant chignon at the nape of her neck, leaving her long, graceful neck bare for the necklace. When they were finished, Antoine stepped forward with the dress. It slid on like water, the silk cool against her skin. It fit as if it had been sewn directly onto her body. "Now," Antoine said, opening the steel case. Seraphil stood perfectly still as the cold, heavy weight of the Céline necklace was clasped around her neck. The earrings were clicked into place. They were heavy, a physical reminder of the power she was borrowing. Antoine stepped back and handed Seraphil a floor-length mirror she had brought. Seraphil looked. The woman in the mirror was not Seraphil Vance, not the gallery manager, not Mark's pathetic ex-wife. The woman in the mirror was magnificent. She was regal. The emerald green of the dress and the impossible deep green of the jewels made her glow. She looked powerful. She looked expensive. But more than that, she looked unbreakable. "It is time," Antoine said, a rare glimmer of approval in her eyes. A black Mercedes Maybach was waiting downstairs. Not a flashy limo, but the subdued 6-figure chariot of the truly wealthy. The driver opened the door and Seraphil slid in. Jackson Thorne was waiting for her inside. He, too, was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. He looked at her, and for the first time his cool, analytical gaze warmed. He didn't just look. He appreciated. "Seraphil," he said. His voice was a low hum of approval. "You are correct." He didn't say beautiful or stunning. He said correct. For the part she was about to play, it was the perfect compliment. He handed her a champagne flute. "For courage." As she said, she saw two other black cars, identical sedans, fall in line behind them as they pulled away from the curb. Her security detail. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "I feel like I'm going to be sick," she admitted. "Good. Nerves keep you sharp. Remember the plan. We arrive. We are seen. We do not engage in any arguments. You are above them. When Amelia or Mark approaches you, you are polite, you are brief, and you are cold. You smile, you congratulate them, and you move on. Your victory is not in what you say. It's in the fact that you are with me. Let me handle Harrison Davenport. And Mark? Mark." Jackson said, his voice flat, "is irrelevant. He is merely the price of admission. He has no power. The power in that room belongs to his new father-in-law. And tonight I'm going to take that power away from him. Just by being there with me." "Oh no," Jackson said, taking a sip of his champagne. "By being there with you, I create the wound. But I have a little surprise for Mr. Davenport. A wedding gift, if you will, that I will deliver at the appropriate moment." The car slowed, turning onto Central Park South. The glittering lights of the Plaza Hotel loomed in front of them. "Showtime," Jackson said. He placed his hand lightly on the small of her back. His touch was firm, possessive, and surprisingly warm. "Head high, Seraphil. You are not his ex-wife tonight. You are my guest." The plaza was a fortress of social anxiety. Paparazzi and society bloggers were camped out by the 58th Street entrance, their flashes popping as minor celebrities and old money families made their way in. The Maybach didn't go to the main entrance. It glided past to a private, discreet side entrance reserved for royalty and heads of state. A hotel manager who looked pale and stressed was waiting for them. "Mr. Thorne, welcome. We have you entering through the private corridor." "Thank you, Michael," Jackson said, stepping out and extending a hand to Seraphil. She took it. Her hand was trembling. He gave it a firm, brief squeeze. "I'm here." They bypassed the main receiving line where Seraphil knew Amelia and Mark would be standing, forcing smiles. Instead, they were escorted through a service hallway past a silent, velvet-roped checkpoint and directly to the main doors of the grand ballroom. "Ready," Jackson murmured. Seraphil nodded, her throat too dry to speak. The hotel manager signaled two waiters who pulled the towering gilded doors open, and they walked in. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The grand ballroom, which had been buzzing with the sound of a string quartet and the chatter of 300 of New York's elite, fell silent. It wasn't a gradual hushing. It was as if someone had pulled a vacuum. The whoosh of silence was deafening. The only sound was the string quartet, which after a moment of stunned dissonance faltered and stopped mid-sonata. Every single head turned. They saw Seraphil first. A vision in emerald green dripping with diamonds that flashed and glittered in the light of the chandeliers. A woman no one recognized but who was so obviously, painfully important. Then they saw the man on whose arm she was resting, and the whispers started. "Oh my God, is that? It can't be. That's Jackson Thorne." Mark Landon and Amelia Davenport were standing by the towering 12-foot-tall wedding cake, laughing with a city councilman. Seraphil saw Mark first. He was in a Tom Ford tux, his hair perfectly coiffed. He looked handsome, successful, and happy. A pang of the old familiar pain shot through her. Then he saw her. His smile didn't just fade. It collapsed. The champagne flute in his hand tilted, spilling Taittinger all over his polished shoe. He didn't even notice. He stared at Seraphil as if he'd seen a ghost. His eyes, wide with disbelief, flicked from her face to the impossible necklace, and then to the man beside her. Mark Landon's face went from shocked to confused to utterly, terrifyingly pale. He knew who Jackson Thorne was. Everyone in finance did. Beside him, Amelia, who had been watching her new husband, turned to see what he was looking at. Her perfectly glossed lips parted in a silent "oh." The jealousy was immediate and visceral. It was an ugly, contorting thing. She saw the dress. She saw the necklace. She knew instantly that those were not rentals. She knew they were worth more than her entire wedding. Who is that?" she hissed at Mark. "That," Mark whispered, his voice strangled, "is Jackson Thorne." What is she doing with Jackson Thorne?" But the worst reaction came from Amelia's father. Harrison Davenport, a beefy man with a face perpetually red from expensive wine and exertion, was holding court by the bar. When he saw Jackson Thorne, his eyes nearly bulged out of his head. A massive, wolfish grin split his face. "He's here," he boomed, clapping a fellow real estate developer on the back. "He's here. I told you a man like Thorne can't resist an opportunity. He's here for the deal." He began to bulldog his way through the crowd. His hand outstretched, a sycophantic smile plastered on his face. He hadn't even looked at the woman on Thorne's arm. He didn't care. "Here we go," Jackson murmured to Serafiel. He kept his hand on her back, guiding her forward into the center of the room as if they owned it. "Smile, Serafiel. They're all watching you." She lifted her chin. She was no longer Serafiel. She was a queen. She smiled a small, polite, devastatingly cool smile as Harrison Davenport barreled toward them. "Mr. Thorne Jackson. What an honor." Harrison bellowed, grabbing Jackson's hand and pumping it. "I am so glad you could make it. This is a glorious day, my daughter, Amelia." He finally turned, expecting to brush aside Jackson's date. He looked at Serafiel. His eyes narrowed. He knew her. He'd seen her at the divorce proceedings. The mousy crying woman his lawyers had torn apart. His smile faltered. What is this?" Jackson extracted his hand from Harrison's grip. He gave Serafiel a look of pure adoration, a look that was entirely for the audience. "Harrison," Jackson said, his voice cutting through the nearby whispers. "A lovely party. You know my companion, of course, Ms. Serafiel Vance." Serafiel met Harrison's gaze. "Mr. Davenport," she said, her voice clear and cool. "Congratulations on your daughter's marriage." The implications hung in the air, thick and toxic. Jackson Thorne had not come as a guest of the Davenports. He had come as the guest of the ex-wife. Harrison Davenport's red face went a mottled, sickly purple. He finally understood. This was not an acceptance. This was a declaration of war. The spell was broken. The music stuttered back to life. But the atmosphere of the wedding was irrevocably changed. The air was charged with tension. Serafiel and Jackson were the new center of gravity. People didn't just look, they stared. A small, brave circle of guests, sensing the shift in power, began to drift toward them, eager to be introduced to Jackson Thorne. "Jackson." A woman in a Chanel suit breathed, "I haven't seen you out in ages." "And who is this vision?" "This is Serafiel Vance," Jackson said, his hand never leaving her back. "Serafiel is a brilliant art curator. She's been advising me on my new acquisitions." He was giving her a new identity, a new story right in front of them. She wasn't an ex-wife. She was a brilliant in-demand expert. Serafiel found herself discussing the merits of the new Francis Vale exhibit with a senator and his wife, the words coming easily, confidently. She was, after all, just talking about art. From across the room, she watched her old life collide with her new one. Amelia, her face a mask of rage, was in a furious, whispered argument with Mark. She was jabbing her finger toward Serafiel. Mark just kept shaking his head, running his hands through his hair, his expensive tuxedo now looking rumpled and cheap. He looked trapped. Finally, Amelia could take it no more. She marched over her beaded white gown, hissing across the floor. "Serafiel," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Amelia." "What a beautiful dress," Serafiel replied, her voice calm. "Thank you. I'm so glad you could come, but I must say I'm confused. I had no idea you and Mr. Thorne were acquainted. He was my father's guest." It was a pathetic, desperate lie, and everyone who heard it knew it. "Oh, I don't think so," Seraphil said, taking a sip of the champagne a waiter had handed her. "Jackson and I have been collaborating for some time. He was kind enough to escort me tonight." "Collaborating?" Amelia repeated, her eyes narrowing on the necklace. "Is that what you call it? That's quite a collaboration you're wearing. You should be careful, Seraphil. Men like Mr. Thorne, they rent, they don't buy." The insult was sharp, public, and designed to cut. Seraphil felt the old sting of shame. But before she could reply, Jackson, who had been speaking to the senator, turned. He hadn't raised his voice, but his sudden cold attention made Amelia flinch. "Mrs. Landon," he said, the name Landon sounding like an insult. "Are you implying that Miss Vance is for sale?" Amelia paled. I simply meant, because I assure you she is not. This necklace," he said lightly, touching the center emerald, "was a gift to my grandmother. I lend it only to people I hold in the highest possible esteem." He looked from Seraphil to Amelia, and his gaze was like frost. "Your father, on the other hand, has been trying to sell himself to me for 6 months. It's unbecoming." Amelia looked as if she'd been slapped. She turned and fled, disappearing into the crowd. Seraphil was shaking, but Jackson's hand was firm on her back. "You did perfectly." A moment later, Mark appeared, his face slick with sweat. "Seraphil, I need to talk to you. Alone." "I don't think we have anything to talk about, Mark," she said. "Please. What is this? Are you with him? Are you trying to ruin me? You know who he is. You're playing with fire." "Seraphil, you don't—" "Mark," Seraphil said, and for the first time she felt nothing but pity for him. "It's your wedding day. You should go and be with your wife." "My wife?" He scoffed, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. This is a deal, Seraphil. This is my one shot. Davenport promised me a senior partnership. He promised me, and it all hinges on Thorne. If you've screwed this up for me—" "If I've screwed this up?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "You made this choice, Mark. You chose this. You chose her. You told me I was a weight, that I didn't fit into your new life. Well, look at me. Am I fitting in now?" He stared at her, the realization dawning on him. The woman he'd thrown away was standing in the center of his wedding, being feted by people who wouldn't have given him the time of day, all on the arm of a man he could only dream of meeting. "Seraphil," he began, his voice pleading. "Mr. Landon." Jackson's voice cut in. "I believe your father-in-law is looking for you. He seems distressed." Harrison Davenport was in fact storming toward them, his face purple. "Thorne!" he yelled loud enough for the music to seem to quiet. "I don't know what game you're playing, but you are embarrassing my daughter. You're embarrassing me." "I am playing no game, Harrison," Jackson said coolly. "You came here with her, this nobody. You did it to insult me, to back me into a corner on the Helios project. Well, it won't work, Jackson." Thorne smiled. It was not a nice smile. "That's where you're wrong, Harrison. I didn't come here to back you into a corner. I came here to give you my answer. Your answer. Yes, it's no. I'm not partnering with you on the Helios project. I'm not partnering with you on anything. Ever." You can't," Davenport spluttered. "That project it's solid. My numbers are—" "Your numbers are inflated, and your projections are based on zoning changes that will never be approved. Which brings me to my wedding gift." Jackson reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a simple white envelope. He handed it to Harrison Davenport. Davenport ripped it open. It was a single sheet of paper. He read it. All the color drained from his face. He staggered back, grabbing onto a waiter's tray to steady himself. What is this?" he whispered. "That," Jackson said, "is a press release. It's slated to go out to the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg first thing Monday morning. It's from my office. It announces that after a thorough review, Thorne Industries has found significant and troubling financial irregularities in the Davenport portfolio. It strongly advises all of our partners to divest from any projects associated with your name. You wouldn't," Harrison breathed, but he was looking at a death sentence. That's a lie. It's slander." "Is it?" Jackson asked. "My forensic accountants are the best in the world. They found it all, Harrison. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the bribes to the city council. You're not a mogul. You're a con artist. And you're over-leveraged. This press release, it won't just kill the Helios project. It will trigger a run on your credit. You'll be bankrupt by Christmas." Mark Landon, who had been listening, looked like he was going to be physically ill. He had just married into a family that was about to be destroyed. He was about to be destroyed. "But," Harrison said, his mind racing, "but why? I'll walk away. I'll never bother you again." Jackson's gaze was ice. "Because," he said, his voice soft but carrying, "I do not as a rule do business with men who build their empires on deceit. And more personally, I do not like men who raise their children to be cruel." He nodded briefly toward where Amelia was now standing, watching her face a mask of horror. He then turned to Seraphiel. "Seraphiel, I believe we've seen enough. Shall we?" He offered her his arm. Seraphiel looked at the ruins of the three people who had ruined her. Harrison broken. Mark a hollow shell. Amelia crying, her mascara running. She felt no joy, no triumph. She just felt done. She placed her hand on Jackson's arm. "Yes," she said. "Let's go." They turned. The entire room silent parted for them. They walked out of the grand ballroom not as a broken ex-wife and a billionaire, but as the only two people in the room who truly had all the power. The ride back in the Maybach was encased in a profound, heavy silence. The city lights of Manhattan blurred past the tinted windows, a river of fractured diamonds that for the first time Seraphiel felt no connection to. She was suspended in an unreal bubble of rich leather, expensive scotch, and the silent, potent presence of the man beside her. She was staring at her own reflection in the glass. The woman looking back was a stranger draped in a king's ransom. She had walked into that ballroom as a ghost, an afterthought to another woman's triumph. She had walked out as, what? A weapon. A co-conspirator. The victor. The victory felt cold. She had watched the complete and utter dismantling of three people. There was no joy in it. No triumphant swell of music. There was only the clinical quiet finality of a predator ending its hunt. She had been for one night allied with that predator. In the quiet, she finally began to cry. It was not the gut-wrenching, howling grief she had endured when Mark left. It was not the desperate, lonely sobs she had stifled in her tiny apartment. This was a silent, hot, steady stream of tears. It was a pressure valve releasing everything. The shame, the anger, the years of feeling invisible, and the shocking, terrifying vertigo of the night's power. It all flowed out of her, leaving her feeling scoured clean and utterly exhausted. Jackson didn't say a word. He didn't pat her hand, offer a platitude, or ask if she was all right. He simply, without looking at her, reached into an interior compartment and handed her a folded, heavy silk pocket square. It smelled faintly of his cologne, something clean like bergamot and cedar. She pressed it to her eyes, the material impossibly soft, and composed herself. When she was done, she folded it neatly and held it in her lap. The car, which had been a glittering chariot, slowed as it pulled up to her fourth-floor walk-up in Greenpoint. The contrast was brutal. The crumbling stoop, the flickering streetlight, the faint smell of garbage from the corner. It was as if the fairy tale had not just ended, but shattered on the pavement. The two black security sedans slid in silently behind them, boxing them in. The spell was broken. I should give you back the necklace, she said, her voice husky. Her fingers fumbled for the clasp at her nape, but they were trembling. The necklace was heavy, a beautiful cold weight, a costume. Leave it, Jackson said, his voice quiet but firm. My head of security will retrieve it from you inside. It's not proper to remove it on the street. He exited the car and walked around to open her door, his movements economical and precise. A tall man in a dark suit, Mr. Harris, had already exited the lead car and stood impassively by the building's entrance. Jackson walked her to the chipped front door. The air was cold and it bit at her bare shoulders. This was it. The transaction was complete. Well, she said, trying to find the words. Thank you, Jackson, for everything. You kept your end of the bargain. It was more than I could have imagined. A cold, hollow finality settled in her chest. The Maybach would drive away, Mr. Harris would take the jewels, and she would be Seraphil Vance again, just one with a very strange, unbelievable story to tell. She was Cinderella, and the clock had just struck midnight. Good night, Jackson. She turned the key in the lock, but his voice stopped her. Seraphil. She turned back. He was standing under the weak yellow porch light, a tall, dark silhouette. I have one more piece of business, he said. It concerns the Elysian Gallery. Her heart, which had just begun to beat, normally plummeted. Arthur, is he okay? What happened? Did the developer? I bought it, he said. The words didn't compute. You... what? I bought the building. This afternoon. The holding company that owned it was on the verge of bankruptcy. I acquired their portfolio. Seraphil stared at him in horror, the tears she'd just staunched threatening to return. This felt like a new, unimagined cruelty. You bought it, why to gut it, to turn it into condos? Was this all just some elaborate, cruel game to show me you could take that from me too? Jackson watched her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. He let her accusations hang in the air for a beat. I am not Mark Landon Seraphil, he said, his voice sharp. I do not destroy things I value. Arthur was 2 weeks from foreclosure. The developer's offer was insulting. My offer was generous. He's on a plane to Palm Beach as we speak. But then why? I told you, he said when we first met. I am a man who appreciates overlooked assets. The gallery under its current management was failing, but the curator... He took a step closer. The curator has the best eye in New York. I don't just invest in companies, I invest in people. You saw value in Francis Vale when no one else did. That is a rare and very profitable skill. He reached into his tuxedo jacket and handed her a new envelope. This one was simple, professional, heavy cream stock. Her name was typed on the front. She opened it. It was a contract. This is an offer of employment, he said. I am dissolving my current art acquisition division. It's lackluster. I am building a new flagship gallery in Chelsea, 10,000 square feet in the new Gary building. It will be called the Thorn Gallery. I need someone to run it, someone with passion, someone who isn't afraid to tell me I'm wrong. Seraphil's eyes scanned the pages. She saw phrases like chief curator, unlimited acquisitions budget, and then a salary. It wasn't just a number. It was a statement. It was a life-altering, world-changing figure. This is, she whispered, this is a rescue. No, Jackson said immediately, and his voice was hard. It is not. I am not a Prince Seraphil. I do not believe in fairy tales, and I do not rescue damsels. I am a businessman. This is a high-yield investment. You are an asset. I'd be a fool to let you go. He gestured to her crumbling apartment building, then back to the contract. You can stay here in the life they left you with, or you can come and build an empire. Not for me. With me. He wasn't offering her a fantasy. He was offering her work. Hard, brilliant, meaningful work. He was offering her a weapon not to fight her old life, but to build a new one. Seraphil looked at the contract, a key to a world she'd never even known how to dream of. Then she looked at Jackson Thorne. He was dangerous. He was cold, and he was the most honest person she had ever met. A smile, a real genuine powerful smile, spread across her face. It reached her eyes, which were still bright from her tears. She folded the contract and handed it back to him. He raised an eyebrow, his one sign of surprise. "I'll have my lawyer look this over," she said, her voice now firm. "And I have one condition." "Go on." "The salary is fine. The budget is generous. But I want a discretionary fund. For artists like Francis Vale. The ones no one sees yet. The ones I find. And it answers only to me." A flicker of something approval, amusement danced in his cold eyes. He took the contract. "You'll have a counteroffer on your desk by Monday," he said. "Good," she replied. She turned, unlocked her door, and paused. "Mr. Harris," she called, "you can come up. I'll have the necklace in its box." She looked back at Jackson Thorne one last time. "Monday, then, 8 a.m. 7:30, she said. "I like to be early." She walked into her building, leaving the door open for the security man, and did not look back. The clock hadn't struck midnight. The sun was just beginning to rise. Seraphil's story isn't about getting revenge. It's about finding your own value when everyone else has written you off. They thought she was a postscript to her ex-husband's story, but she was just the beginning of her own. She didn't need a prince to save her. She just needed an opportunity to become the queen she always was. Sometimes the best happily ever after isn't a kiss. It's a contract. What did you think of Seraphil's story? Have you ever felt underestimated? Let us know in the comments below. Your story could be the one we tell next. Thank you for watching. If you love this story of an incredible comeback, please hit that like button so we know to make more. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own power. And most importantly, click subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another story.